cross one ankle over the opposite knee. Sit up nice and tall. And for most people, that will already create a stretch here in the outside of the hip. If not, then what you want to do is hinge forward from your hips and not from your waist. So when I say hinge forward, we're not rounding the back down here.
This is Get Fit with Rachel. Today I got a guest for you. She's absolutely amazing. Her name is McCall Almada. She specializes in corrective exercise, is that correct?
That's correct.
As well as a PT assistant.
Yes, I'm a licensed physical therapist assistant.
Okay, so can you explain to us exactly what is corrective exercise?
So corrective exercise is a highly specialized form of fitness training that's meant to target muscular imbalances and length to strength ratios in our bodies that may be acting improperly on our joints and soft tissues that result in chronic muscle fatigue and pain.
Oh, so she's basically breaking down me. I actually go to McCall for a couple different things. Can you tell us what is something that women deal with quite frequently?
So a lot of women deal with upper neck and upper trap pain and chronic fatigue. Whether you work at a desk or you spend a lot of time driving or you've had a previous injury such as whiplash, the muscle tension can become imbalanced in a way where your front muscles, especially around your chest and front of your neck, become too tight, and this draws us forward, creating an exaggerated curve of our upper spine. And in response to that, in order to orient ourselves with the world, we'll therefore exaggerate the curve of our neck as well. And this means that we're chronically engaging those muscles of our neck, and they're never really given a chance to relax. And so they become tighter, our chest becomes tighter, our upper traps become tighter, and then we experience headaches and premature fatigue throughout the day.
That's something I commonly deal with. It's absolutely terrible. Before I have you show us some exercises to help with that, what are some things that men deal with?
I have a lot of complaints from men in their low back. And so this can actually come from a lack of flexibility in the hip joint, a lack of range of motion, as well as a common tendency, just cultural, for men to sit with their legs wide and not cross them. And so this actually results in exaggerated tension in the outer hips, which will directly pull on the low back. So the less flexibility and motion that we have in our hips, the more we're required to move from our lower spine in order to achieve the positions that we're getting into throughout the day. So men have a tendency to have really tight hips and experience more low back pain.
Ooh, terrible. Okay, can you show us some exercises that men can do to help with that?
Oh, sure. So a super easy exercise to help loosen up the hips that you can do anytime is, while you're seated, to cross one ankle over the opposite knee. Sit up nice and tall. And for most people, that will already create a stretch here in the outside of the hip. If not, then what you want to do is hinge forward from your hips and not from your waist. So when I say hinge forward, we're not rounding the back down here, but we're staying nice and upright and leaning into it until you feel a nice pull on the outer hip.
Well, I suppose you probably see a lot of common mistakes like rolling forward versus sitting tall and hinging forward.
Exactly, and that's where the precision of corrective exercise comes in. It's all about doing these movements in proper form.
For women, going back to that chest one, is there anything that we can do to like open up our chest?
Absolutely. A really easy exercise would just to be a pec minor stretch. So anytime you walk by a wall, let's go ahead and use this one right here. What I'm going to have you do, what I'll have you do is I'm going to have you turn and face that way.
Okay.
And then back your body up so that you're even with the door jamb there.
Okay.
And so now you're going to take your left arm and you're going to bend it at a right angle, like so, and place your forearm on the door.
Okay.
Good. And then what you're going to do is, keeping your chest upright, you're going to step forward with the same leg as the arm that you're stretching, as if you were going to walk past the door. Good. And you feel how the moment you made that little gesture, it pulls tight across your chest, front of your shoulder, and maybe into your arm as well. And so you're going to hold that for a count of 30 seconds.
That's incredible. So naturally, right, when we're telling folks to stretch out, it's usually just the heel of the hand, press it in, and then press away from yourself, which can be incredible. But this gentle movement alone, if you haven't done it, you guys, truly, you need to do it. It is absolutely amazing. Just something so small. That's incredible. What are some other things that we might be able to do?
Neck stretching as well. So we spend a lot of time actually looking up, and not when we might feel like our head is even, but as I explained before, if your upper back is a little bit rounded because you're too tight in the front, then you're actually going to be craning your neck up in order to see your world straight. So one thing you might want to do is just bow your chin gently down to your chest and let it hang, not offering overpressure, but just letting the weight of your head create the stretch on the back side of your neck. And hold gently for 30 seconds. And now, when you're done with the 30 seconds, what you want to do is think about rolling your neck up from the bottom of your neck all the way to the top, slightly tucking your chin like a pigeon. There you go.
That's incredible. And because those smaller muscles are a little bit weaker for me, because this is a problem that I have, I always tell my husband, I say, I feel like I have duck neck, because I feel like that's, you know what it is. Naturally, I can feel myself shaking a little bit because those muscles are a little bit weak, and then those other big muscles try to constantly take over.
So one way you can train those smaller muscles, again, just an exercise that you can do throughout the day, is if you'll stand with your back against that wall again.
Okay.
Perfect, right there. And then if you've watched a pigeon, so pigeons kind of walk down the street and they bob their head forward and back, forward and back. So you're going to do just the back side of a pigeon's head bob into that wall. So you're just going to gently tuck your head back and hold for 3, 2, 1, and then relax to a neutral position, but don't overcorrect into that forward head bob. And so here we're just gently training the deep muscles of the neck to keep our head back centered over our cervical spine, which allows them to relax and do a little bit less effort throughout the day.
That's absolutely incredible. Once again, I just can't express how neat it is, just learning how to properly move a lot of those small muscles, because in training, you know, it's constantly big muscles, big movements, and I feel that a lot of times we don't use those small muscles enough. Do you find that you see that a lot with your training?
Absolutely. So they refer to those smaller postural muscles as local muscles, and the larger muscle groups that we're used to working at the gym as global muscles. So when the smaller local muscles are too weak, the larger global muscles take over the job. And that's actually a bad thing, because they will pull you further out of alignment because they're not meant to stabilize you. Those larger muscles are meant to move you.
Oh, interesting. Now, kind of coming back to hips and lower back pain. Now, I know from training that sometimes it's actually because a lot of times our glutes aren't activating properly. What are some things that folks can do to start to work those smaller muscles within the glutes, or even properly activate some of those bigger muscles?
So because we spend a lot of our time seated, whether we're in a car or at work, the muscles in the front of our hips, which are referred to as our hip flexors, become tight because they're in a chronically flexed position. This will in turn stretch the glutes and create weakness. So while you might be doing an exercise and you want to use your glutes, you might actually be inhibiting your glutes because of the tension in the front. So what you want to do first is an exercise to release the hip flexors on the front. This can be done with a myofascial release ball or a foam roller.
Okay.
Then you want to stretch those muscles to contribute to lengthening them and allowing the glute to be in a neutral position where it can fire. And only then do you want to actually go into a strengthening exercise for the glutes, such as glute bridges.
Oh, interesting. So that's probably one area that folks go wrong a lot, is they don't release before they go to activate those glute muscles. So in return, you almost just keep repeating the cycle and making it worse, I suppose.
Exactly.
Oh, wow, that's intriguing. I see you have a few skeletal muscle things here today. Is there any demonstrations you'd like to do?
Yes. So this little guy here, he's a puppet, and he's a string puppet. And so he has a string running through him that I released the button on the bottom. The string is nice and loose, and he can move however he wants. But when I release the button, the string pulls tight, and that's actually how our muscles work, is when they pull tight, they're meant to pull us into a straight position. Now, my little puppet does not have a straight position because he has a tight hip flexor. So you can see that hip flexor, this tight string, is trying to bend his knee up, and that's what our hip flexors do in our bodies. But you can see that if I let him go, he's going to be flexed forward, and he's going to lean slightly towards that tight muscle that he has. So if he were going to try to be in a neutral position, he's going to have to fire his quad very, very strongly in order to create a straight knee. And then he's going to have to overcome the tension of his hip flexor and fire his glute, overly fire his glute in order to maintain an upright position. So he's actually putting forth a lot of effort to stay upright. But if we could target this, if we can find this in a real human person and release this muscle, it actually allows him to fire his glute with ease instead of with so much effort. And then when we train that glute muscle to become just as equally strong as the hip flexor is tight, then he's going to be in balance, and then maintaining a neutral position will be effortless.
Oh, wonderful. No pain then, I suppose.
Exactly.
And that's ultimately what you're trying to do, is allow people to be pain-free. Is that correct?
Exactly. Less pain, less fatigue.
So if you're at home and you're watching this, who would be an ideal candidate to come to you?
Everybody.
Yes. And why is that?
If you've lived long enough, you've either spent enough time in one position where you're going to start to have some muscles that are tight and some muscles that are weak, or you've lived long enough that you've sustained an injury. So if you've ever sustained an injury and you've healed from it, maybe you've already been to physical therapy, you might notice that that part of your body, while it's functional, doesn't quite work the way it used to. And that's because of these underlying muscle imbalances that develop while you're healing from that injury. So whether you have just lived a life and you're finding that you have tight spots and that your body doesn't work quite the same way it did when you were younger, or you've had injuries, or you have repeated injuries, and you're not sure why you keep getting hurt, any of those things are keys that you have muscular imbalances that need to be addressed with corrective exercise.
Oh, wonderful. And also, I would like to point out, even if you're older, younger, whatever, everybody should really do these, because you should learn how to work your body properly in every which way, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So if you're starting a new workout program, a lot of the times people feel that their bodies work fine, but then when they go into a gym, they find that there are certain movements they can't do with a weight that might create pain, or they just simply can't move into that position, and so they can't strengthen the muscle that they're looking for. So if you first start with corrective exercise, what we can do is figure out what's too tight, what's too loose, what's misaligned, and get you into the proper position so that you can advance your fitness routine in the way that you want to without creating injury or pain.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, you're absolutely amazing. So McCall, can you give us just a quick recap on some of these exercises folks can do at home to release some tension or provide the proper movements for their bodies?
Yes, so remember, every time that you walk through a doorway, go ahead and pin that arm up, forearm to the wall at a right angle, same leg, and stretch that chest as many times as you want to throughout the day, and hold for 30 seconds.
Wonderful.
And then anytime you're having a seat, remember to cross your legs and stretch your hip.
And what were you saying about if you can't sit perfectly nice and tall?
Then go ahead and lean forward.
Lean forward, make sure you're not rounding.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. That's such a great tip. And lastly, we were talking about the neck. So what can we do for
Yeah,
that?
so chin tuck, just remembering to gently retract your neck and hold for 3 seconds, up to 10 times, to train your neck muscles to keep your head aligned properly over your spine.
Absolutely beautiful. So, you guys at home, don't forget, with these few simple corrective exercise movements, you can just turn your whole life around, get pain-free. And once again, don't forget to look up McCall. The description will be down below. You guys are amazing. Make sure we say stronger together. We're out.
That was perfect. Absolutely perfect.